afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's Davos has been kind to them. I know mine has. I definitely have felt a different energy this year. This is only my third one, so let's hope that this panel reinvigorates that for some of the people in this room. Look, we're here to talk about agricultural revolution, but in truth, what we're really going to be talking about is whether the world can remain stable, equitable, and fed in the decades ahead. So I'm here today wearing two hats. I am a UN Goodwill Ambassador for the International Fund for Agricultural Development. And I'm also someone who believes that food systems are no longer a sectoral issue. They are now a defining economic, climate, and geopolitical issue. It is, in fact, I believe, the issue of our time. And if you don't know too much about IFAD works with rural people at the first mile across the global south. Rural people who are working hard, farming the ingredients that we know and love, feeding a large population of the world, in fact, I think about 70%, but also protecting the Earth's resilience through things like biodiversity. And their knowledge of nature is something that IFAD recognizes as a tool. In fact, IFAD doesn't just see them at the margins of the problem. They are at the center of the problem. They are also the solution. And we have a really exciting panel today. As you can see, we have very cool guests with us that I feel very humbled and honored to introduce. We have Ruhweza, who's the president of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, which is AGRA, as you might know it as. Alice is the president of the Alliance for the Green Revolution, but she also works closely with smallholder farmers and governments to strengthen food security, resilience, and nutrition across the continent. If we can just give a round of applause for Alice. We also have Herman Betten, who's the Chief Sustainability and Corporate Affairs Officer of Flora Food Group in the Netherlands. He is guiding a global organization operating in more than 100 countries. Flora Food Group has undergone successful transformation to become a culinary-driven company anchored in a clear purpose, culinary essentials for better food. Please, a round of applause. We also have Nyifamu Manzo. She's a global shaper of Kaduna Hub and Farm Matrix in Nigeria. She is working at the intersection of agriculture, technology, and youth-led innovation in rural communities. Round of applause, please. Frutiger, who's the Vice Director General, Head of Thematic Cooperation, Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC. And Christian is leading thematic cooperation, focusing on science, innovation, and partnerships to support sustainable development globally. Thank you, Christian. And we also have Sam Kass, who's a partner at Acre Venture Partners, USA. He's also a young global leader. Sam is working on culture, public health, sustainable investment, from farms all the way to our plates. He is an absolutely amazing chef. He also recently published a new book called The Last Supper, which looks at how today's food choices are shaping health, climate, and future. And I'm going to start with yourself, Alice. Oh, can I get a round of applause for Sam, please? How could I do that to you, Sam?
Yeah.
Me and Sam have a bit of a... Alice, can I please start with yourself? I'd love to ask you, from your work with smallholder farmers, how are climate shocks and market pressures affecting food security today?
Thank you very much for that question, and I'm pleased to be here. This is my first Davos, and I'm looking forward to coming back. So, climate shocks have such a domino effect. You know, they are not just one happening. When one climate shock happens, it triggers hunger, water scarcity, economic breakdown, and long-term development reversals. And I'll give you an example. In 2023-24, we had El Nino. El Nino is a drought that occurred in southern Africa. In Zambia, maize production dropped by 53%. 1 million hectares affected. Flooding in West Africa, same time, destroyed harvests. Food prices go higher, and the food becomes unaffordable for families who spend at least 60 to 70% of their income on food. And then water scarcity, families working hours for water, rising waterborne diseases, malnutrition, energy collapse because we have hydropower energy. So really, when we have one issue in climate, it affects everybody. So I want to give you an example from a place called Kaduna, where she's from, in Nigeria. And it's known for dry spells and erratic rainfalls and weak extension systems. And this farmer called Amina, the 34-year-old farmer, who had never farmed rice independently due to cost, risk, and social barriers. We at AGRA worked with the state authorities and system actors to address these constraints. Through our support, Amina accessed $400 worth of inputs and bundled with advisory services. She received help from our village-based advisors who are extension systems on soil health, on climate adaptation, and on seed use. And as a result, someone who had never farmed now had 14 bags of rice from half a hectare, doubling historical yields. She got some income stability, and her experience reflects really a broader shift that we are doing, that when you support women, when you support people like this, they thrive.
Well, then interesting. I think I know what the answer that you're going to give to this question is. What do you think is the biggest investment that we can have? What has the biggest impact and return in rural resilience?
You know, I was going to say women. I was going to say this women. But actually, I'm going to talk about school feeding. Because, think about it, Africa is got at least 70% of its population under the age of 22. We are the only continent that is going to have a population growth. And therefore, we have a demographic dividend. We can provide the world with labor, with skilled labor. But the only way to do that is if we make sure that our children are feeding on healthy food. And so with school feeding, you're addressing high malnutrition, you're addressing stunting levels, you're addressing you know that you're going to have, those children will grow and they will become the labor force of the future. And we have several examples which I can share around what we've done in Kenya, Tanzania, and Malawi, where we've directly intervened in school feeding programs by providing biofortified crops like vitamin A enriched maize, like high iron beans, delivering through those school meals so that the children are getting more efficient, more nutritious food.
No, I think that's really important. I actually remember going on a field visit early on and speaking to the community about why the children had stopped going to school. And it was because they didn't have school meals at that school. It is absolutely crucial. I agree.
It has been a game changer because even for the children who don't go to school, who live near the school, when that bell rings, everybody eats. It's so special.
No, it is special. Thank you for that. Herman, if I can then jump to you, I actually want to ask, from a global supply chain perspective, how are we going to align consumer preferences with farmers and create food systems that are affordable, but I think also accessible?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Thanks for having me here. It's not my first Davos. It's my 17th, but it is my first panel discussion. So I managed to be here for so many years and not be on the panel, but it's great to have that.
This is your first panel?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's like...
Yeah, are you surprised?
How did it happen? What did you do?
So I was not expecting a lot of response to this question. Anyway, to come back, I represent Flora Food Group, and you know, we are more than 150 years old. We were founded somewhere in the 19th century. The company at least started, you know, to address a malnutrition issue in Europe by inventing an alternative to butter, and we've always looked at people first. So I also believe in many discussions we've had in Davos, and I've participated in many discussions, just not sitting on a panel. We always talk about from farm to fork. That's been a staple, not pun intended, in these conversations. I also like to look at the other way around. So start with the fork and work your way back to the farm, because food really can only contribute to something if it's actually being consumed. So that's why we start with the consumer, we look at their needs, and then we work our way back in the value chain. Our products are spreads, creams, liquids. These are not products that are intended for use or consumption in isolation, right? We're not an ice cream manufacturer. If you come home, you want to watch a Netflix movie, you're not going to walk to the fridge, get a tub of Country Crock and empty it. That's not, you know, what our product's about. You can do it, but I would not recommend. Our products are used to make better food, to make meals as a cooking ingredient. And because our products are in mostly about fat, and especially about unsaturated fat, it also helps you to absorb these vitamins in school feedings and whatnot. So we started over there, but since that our products are not meant to be consumed in isolation. It also means that change and progress is not done by just us. We collaborate throughout the supply chain. We start with the farmer, all the way through the retailer where the people who buy our products go to make sure that indeed it is first and foremost needs to be tasty. If it's not tasty, people won't buy it. And then it needs to be affordable, and of course it needs to be nutritious and preferably natural as well. If it all meets these four components, and by the way, more sustainable is another one, but it's not something that consumers immediately will pay more money for. Nevertheless, it is important, and that's also why we look at the carbon impact of our products.
And would you consider that inclusive innovation?
We try to, and especially when we work with farmers, like we buy canola, for instance, in East Africa. We work with farmers there on the ground to make sure that, first of all, they get a fair price, but second of all, that they are able to invest in their future and also make sure that their farms and their lands stay resilient. So we work with various projects on, what some people call regenerative agriculture. I prefer to say, a more sustainable way of farming to ensure that those crops are available and affordable, but also provide a good income for the farmer. That's indeed where it starts with, but it should go all the way to the plate, because also the average family in Europe, for instance, is 80 to 100 euros a week to spend on food for a family of 4. That's not a lot of money. So our audience are hardworking moms and dads in all these countries that also don't have a lot of money to buy. So it's all trade-offs and balances, but I think if you work together, it can be managed.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you said about, consumers maybe not necessarily picking out the sustainable item at first, but how do you approach the education on that? Are you educating your consumers on that?
We are educating indirectly. So, for instance, we've built a large network of nutritionists. We started in North America. We're expanding this to Europe to educate them on the role of fats in a diet. We all were grown up with the idea that fats are bad for you. And indeed, some fats, like trans fats, are really bad for you. They clog your arteries. But there are other fats, the unsaturated fats or the polyunsaturated fats like omega-3, omega-6, that you need for health development. But you just discussed for kids to reach their full potential. Right? If you do not have an omega-3 shortage as you grow up, you will achieve a much higher IQ. It can be 3-4% points in IQ. That means, the difference between someone reaching its full potential or not.
As a business owner of someone who has a brand that connects, or tries to maintain a responsible supply chain, and in beauty that's particularly difficult. It's not something that's spoken about. But in food, I would have thought people would have that relation more. And Sam, I'm wondering, do you find that sorry, I'm going a bit rogue here, if you don't mind. I'm genuinely curious.
Let's do it.
When people are at your dinners learning about the food, do they think green beans on my plate, there's a farmer in Kenya that farmed these, and do they make the connection to people? Because I think it's often lost.
Well, first of all, hi everybody. How you guys doing? Good. Thank you guys for coming. I think for the average, consumer, I think the answer to that still is no. I think we take our food for granted mostly, certainly in the Western world. I think we assume we'll always have a bounty of food to eat, and don't really make the connection that. Where it comes from, the soil that it's grown in, the resources it takes, and all of the hard work and risk, the livelihoods and risks that farmers are taking on every day to ensure that we have sustenance. And I think the lack of that connection is actually is one of the cornerstones of why we are in such a tough space.
I agree.
Because if you don't appreciate that and have an understanding about what values we should be supporting, bad outcomes start to happen, both from an environmental standpoint, which we'll get into more, but also a health standpoint. And it's that detachment that is leading to a lot of these, dire health outcomes that we're seeing around the planet.
Yeah, and actually that's one of the reasons I got into the climate work that I do, through the way of people, because I care about people, and if we're not protecting the earth for people, what are we protecting it for? It's definitely not just the global north, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's a perfect segue, actually, to yourself, if you don't mind, Nyifamu. I'd love to ask you, because you're working with young people in rural areas, what are they experiencing right now? I think we think of climate shocks as something that's happening way in the future, where, I was in Zambia a couple years ago driving across some fields, asking my driver, oh, had they done some burning here? And he turned around and said, no, it just didn't rain this year. The rain season didn't come. You know, so what are people experiencing right now, and particularly young people, but also, I guess, what's shaping their economic choices around agriculture?
Thank you so much, and hello everyone. I always like to talk about young people because I feel like they push them by the corner. But yeah, it's that young people are not really scared in rural communities about agriculture or what the economic value looks for them. But what they struggle with are like the risk, the uncertainty, and the invisibility that comes with it. About 8% of Nigerians are like young people who are between the age of 15 to 35 years old. And just to put it out there, in Nigeria, over 230 million people, and we are a fast-growing population with young people at the center of it. And most of these young people live in rural communities. I live in Kaduna that have been spotlighted now, and I'm so excited that, there's a farmer from Kaduna that have been noticed here in Davos. Thank you.
I brought her story to Davos.
I know, yes.
Tell her that when you go back.
Thank you. So, but there's still a lot of young people who are very passionate about agriculture, but they are not being spotlighted as much. They're not getting the right support that they should get.
Right.
I always say I am a story of possibilities. I'm here because people put a bet on me as a young person who is working around their cultural solutions. Just to put it out there, one of the work that we do at Famitrix Agro is to support women and young people by training them on climate-smart agriculture, resilient agriculture, providing them with input financing like fertilizers, seeds, and pesticides, and also connecting them to profitable markets. For us, I see agriculture as a business, right? But for young people who tech is like everywhere right now, people want something that is more profitable for them economically, which is still very okay. So they need more incentives to come into the agricultural sector.
They need to find it sexy.
Yeah, they need to find it sexy. Like people always say, though I do not really fancy that because it doesn't have to be all fancy and sexy because it's a real value to the economy. We have all eaten today, most likely so, right? And it takes at least 4 farmers to put food on your table. And the young people are the strongest workforce now to make that happen. So we need to empower them. We need to de-risk them. We need to make them know that this is profitable to the economy. So they are not going to be giving aids and all that and just come as a farmer, as a young person, make it look all good and sexy, however, knowing that you have value that you're bringing on the table.
But tech is important to that because it's profit at the end of the day. You're right. It's not just whether it's appealing or not. It's am I going to make money doing this? And if we can increase yields, increase profit through tech, which, you're already seeing AI do that in agriculture, then it's going to make sense for young people to find it attractive.
Yeah, so we work, most of my staff, under 30, and most of the young people...
That deserves a round of applause. No big deal.
Most of the young people that I work with...
Excellent.
And most of the young people, most of my staff, I'm the co-founder. My co-founder is also a young person, and we have about 7 people who are young people working in my team. And we use technology, so we are AI-driven. We have a platform that we're using onboarding our smallholder farmers who are over 8,000 at the moment, and we are scaling to 20,000, mostly women and young people in northern Nigeria, right? And one of the things that we bring as incentives for these young people are, we are young people building for young people, right? So let's show them what is possible using technology, using on-the-ground knowledge. If you've studied, my background is in computer science, by the way, but I don't code. I don't write any line of code. My co-founder does that. But yes, so it's that you can study computer science, you can be an engineer, but you can still come into the food system space, right? Because the value chain is very big and broad. So young people have a space in between to come in.
That's amazing. And how do you see them, or how do you see a dignified future for youth in agriculture?
I think it's just to empower young people, really.
Yeah.
They need to see the value. We have a saying in Nigeria that you are the future of tomorrow. The young people are the future of tomorrow. And we always laugh about it and say, we are here now. It's not about tomorrow. We need to fix it now, right? It's today. It's today. So it's not just tomorrow. So it's to incentivize young people to ensure that they see a future. I've seen statistics where young people now jump from sector to sector, within 3 years, I've jumped about 3 roles, other than the older generations that I really do admire, that stay in a particular role for like 20 years, 50 years, putting their heart into something. Yeah. But that's because I think there's sort of like an incentive, there's sort of a future there. So if we can provide those features for them in agriculture, showing what is possible, having people like Agra, or other funders or investors, investing in young people, investing in technology in agriculture, a lot of young people would want to stay. Because I have a lot of friends across the continent who are building amazing solutions across the agricultural value chain. And they're all young people, and they want to be here for a long time.
Oh,
and I think that doesn't get showcased enough, the innovation that is across the system. And maybe it's because it's not a lot to see, but there's a lot of young people doing things like you're doing, especially with mobile technology. So we just need to harness that.
Yeah. And on the continent, it's particularly interesting. I mean, you see all these facts about 10 million people entering the workforce under 18 every year. Yes. It's the only continent with a growing population. I mean, the numbers will be there. You can't avoid it, right? Christian, if I can turn to you for a second, I really want to ask you, how do farmer economics and public investment intersect? But also, where are their biggest gaps?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And well, I've been up here a few times, and I lost count of the panels.
Sorry, Herman.
A little shade there, Herman. A little shade.
Got a little competitive.
Yeah. But I'm really happy that the subtitle to this event is "Agriculture is Back," and I'm really glad to hear that agriculture is back and is being discussed. Yeah. And it's also being discussed from a young people perspective. Because the fact is that, only 1 in 20 farmers worldwide are under 35. And then you look at sub-Saharan Africa and you see that, 70-80% of the jobs are still in agriculture, but this is not where young people are going. So, who will be growing the food of the future? Who will be growing the cash crops of the future? So if we come back to your question, farmers are really good economists. They're really good. And like all investors, public or private, they want to make a decent return and a decent living. It's just, and that there we have the obstacles, that they have so many issues to deal with. Obstacles ranging from climate change to really short-term needs, that it's difficult for them to invest in the longer term. So some of the big gaps, and one of those which is really often neglected, but one of the major ones, is land tenure. If farmers don't own the land or have no land security, they're not going to invest. They just try to sort of make a living. And when investments from outside are coming, or from governments, so public or private investments, they have to be done responsibly, in a way that does not affect the land tenure of the farmers and actually the capability of the farmers to produce. There are guidelines of the World Committee on Food Security on all this. Unfortunately, they're not really applied when investments are done. So we have with the Swiss Development Agency, a big project in the Mekong River Delta, which is basically on land governance and really trying to sort these things out. Then another area, you said innovation, research and development, R&D. Science matters and it helps, but it's what we would call slow magic. And slow magic is really difficult to do in a high-paced time. So there are a few organizations that do that, like the CGIAR, do the longer-term research and then roll it out. So for us public donors, but I would also encourage private donors to really look at the slow magic, because the slow magic is going to be needed very fast. If you look at South Asia, wheat is reaching a tipping point. It cannot prosper at 45 centigrade. So solutions have to be found really quickly. And then the last point is this whole question on food crops versus cash crops. Yes, food needs to be grown, but farmers need to make a living. And there is one big issue there, and I keep on coming across this in many places in sub-Saharan Africa, that everybody is basically working for export, where the real issue is local production, local processing for local markets, for local consumption, and nutritious consumption. And when you sort of look a bit more closely, nobody's investing in nutrition in sub-Saharan Africa. So we have together with GAIN a fund, a debt fund, so it's an open-ended debt fund, which is called N3F, so Nutritious Food Financing Facility, that tries to do exactly that. But if you look for other nutrition investment funds, they just don't exist. So anybody who is interested in that, please have a look, and you know, there's a lot of space there.
I also think what you said about land is particularly interesting for societies that have issues around land rights for women, for instance. And it just goes to show that a unique, tailored approach needs to happen at the community level per community. You know, there might not be a one-size-fits-all solution. But also maybe one of the challenges is that, you know, when food systems, when there's a climate shock or conflict is when we start looking at them as an economic or a political issue, but really it's an ongoing economic issue, right? We hear about public-private partnerships all the time. I wonder what you think their greatest value is.
I'd say two points. The first is really identifying roadblocks to investment and then remove them. Yeah. It's when you basically get the public, the private actors together, the farmers who are on the ground, the women who actually do the farming, because that's the reality is that the majority of the farmers
for what it is.
who are actually doing this are women. And then look at roadblocks, and that can really help very fast. For example, if you look at irrigation protocols, very often you can irrigate way less and have a much better yield. But there you need an intervention at the local national government level in agricultural schools, and you basically have to help the farmers change the practice, because you have to demonstrate, because they won't invest in the long term, so you have to demonstrate, look, this actually works, and then they will come with you or help them, or you help them with investment. The other advantage, or the other big area for public-private partnerships is really catalyze, is de-risk, catalyze investment, and catalyze investments into local markets. Access to finance, for the moment you get over the microfinance piece, it's close to impossible. And this is also why there is no local or very little local processing, because for small and medium-sized enterprises that transform the food you and your friends grow, they just cannot grow. They cannot access finance. They have to access finance at commercial rates, which basically ruins them before they get anywhere.
Right. No, that's a great way to put it.
Public finance is good. You know, it de-risks.
It's
the one that can do that. It's the only one that can play that role, because private finance will always look for a return. Yeah. So if we can convince our governments and other public finance to remove some of those roadblocks so that private sector can invest, it would.
Right. Yeah.
The system would work. Yes.
Sam, can I jump to you?
Please.
I'd love to from a care perspective, you know, and when we're looking at the plate backwards, which ingredients or production systems would you say are the most strain? But I think the reason I'm really asking you that is, why should people care?
Yeah. You know, I think a lot of times we hear the words climate change, and that doesn't necessarily sound so bad. Or 2 degrees warming. You know, I'm from Chicago. That sounds, or
good.
Being here, that sounds like a good thing. I'm like, let's warm it up. Can we do 5 degrees? And I don't think we've done a good job at helping people understand what's really at stake. And what's really at stake is our way of life, fundamentally, as human beings. And I first did a dinner at COP21 called The Last Supper, entitled The Last Supper, of all the ingredients that, at the time, I thought that our kids and grandkids weren't going to be able to have. And this is a long list of, like, coffee, wine, chocolate. And just right there, it's like, what else do you need to know? Like, coffee, wine, and chocolate? We should be, like, in the streets, like, changing this.
Yeah.
But it's a long list. Shellfish, crustaceans, nuts of all kinds. Really, if you're a tree, you're in a lot of trouble. Because what we're seeing is a mass migration of plants and animals north and south because of warming. The thing that I got totally wrong, or that's increasingly changed since that dinner 10 years ago, is that it's actually happening right now. This is not a future state. I'll give a couple examples, but I could take up the rest of the time going through different crops. I'll give 2 sides of the equation. Chocolate, for example, is being decimated. Last year, chocolate prices were up over 200% last year because of extreme heat and drought. And every bite, and now we are in, one of the chocolate havens of the world, but every bite of chocolate that we eat basically comes from smallholder growers from about 10 degrees of the equator.
It's 5 above and 5 below.
5 above, 5 below. And so that crop, when you project out to the future, most of the areas that are currently growing chocolate, and coffee, by the way, is the same, will unlikely be able to support consistent chocolate production, which means those trees have to move, but they don't walk very well. And the implications for those communities and the people who have their whole livelihoods wrapped up in one of the most delicious things one can eat are really at stake. So you can go through, wine is moving to, the French are buying land in England to make champagne. And things are really messed up when the French are buying land in England to make champagne. That's like emergency alarm bell. Like, what else you got to say? But then we start to get to the big commodities. And when you start to project out to 2040, 2050 and beyond, that's when it starts to get actually pretty scary. I'll just take rice, but we could talk about wheat, we can talk about corn and soy. Rice, depending on where you are in the world, the estimates vary pretty widely. But we're looking at somewhere between a 10 to 40% reduction in average yield. And that doesn't take into account, with extreme weather events, regionally we're going to see total collapses or large collapses of a harvest year over year. So it's like an overall decline with a lot more volatility and disruption in between. 3.5 billion people rely on rice every day to eat. And so when you start to think about, as yields decline, that means prices are going to go up. And we are already dealing with hunger and food insecurity and malnutrition on a level that is completely unacceptable in 2026. That's only going to get much worse. And as you see dramatic declines, you're going to see forced migration, more political instability, more food insecurity, and conflict as a result. And when you deal with those big commodities, it's on a scale that is really hard, honestly, to comprehend the implications of that. And so if we don't start to do much greater work to reduce the overall footprint of the globe, but also start preparing our food systems to adapt and be much more resilient, we basically have all of our eggs in a couple baskets. Almost everything we eat comes from 12 plants and 5 animals, over 70% of our calories. If you're an investor, you would never just put $1 trillion in a couple stocks and hope it works. We have basically done that for our food system because we've created a system that came out of basically the most stable 10,000 years of weather in the history of the globe. We just got really lucky. For real, it's been super calm compared to the history of the planet. And we've had natural resources of water and soil that have been super plentiful, but now we're entering an age of extreme volatility with nowhere near enough water, and our soil resources have been depleted. And so we have to do a lot of work to prepare the system for the future that we find ourselves in.
Let's talk about what we can do, us in this room, what chefs can do, what investors can do. How do we shift demand towards those sustainable systems?
Back to me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Picking on you.
So I think, I think it has to start with culture. I spent 6 years in the White House working on food policy. I have to say, in the Obama White House.
You better qualify that.
Let me just be very clear.
You better qualify that.
And I ran food policy, and I was also their chef. So I had both sort of sides of the equation. I'll tell one quick story to sort of show what's underpinning this. So I'm running the First Lady's big health campaign. It's like a kind of a big deal. She's like, I want real results, and let's make this happen, and it's better be perfect. But there was a policy in the White House of giving out free soda. And it was like the one perk you got. You didn't make very much money, and you worked your butt off all day long, and you couldn't take anything. We took no perks. But from a tradition long ago, you got free soda. But I was like, we can't, it's Michelle's, she's got a huge health initiative. I can't give out free soda. We're going to get creamed in the press. So I talked to her, and she's like, yeah, we got to get rid of that. And I was like, okay, cool, we're getting rid of it. So I went and told the sort of cafeteria that's called the Navy Mess, we got to get rid of the soda. And I tell the chief of staff and the deputy chief of staff, by the way, there's a new policy because we just can't be exposed like this. And they were like, what did you say? I was like, yeah, we can't serve soda. They were like, over my dead body. And they were like, this is who we are. This is my ritual. Like, so every day I get my Coke. You're not taking it away from me. And I was like, come on, like what are you talking about? You just have to pay for it. It'll be there, but you got to pay for it. Within like 2 days, she had organized the entire West Wing. And as I would walk down the halls, they'd be like, you're not really going to do that, are you? And what I realized is, so then it ended up getting to the president. And he comes into, so I'm cooking, and he's like, hey man, it was like the economy was collapsing, you know, he's dealing with all this stuff. He's like, hey man, listen, I can't take this one on right now, man. Like, people are freaking out, and like, we gotta let them drink the Coke, okay? But what I realized was that one food product had become a real ritual. It had become what people would do to gather at 3 o'clock, take a little break, do something good for themselves, interact socially with each other. And for some, it was an identity, like the deputy chief of staff, who I cleaned the story up. It was actually a lot more intense with some vulgarity. It was really her identity. Like, you never saw her without a can of this, and it was really who she was. And what I realized was that top-down decisions and policies don't work. We are all experts. We all eat multiple times a day. It is who we are. It is how we understand who we are not. It's how we show love to each other and how we show love to our children. And so if you want to change fundamentally what we eat, we have to really change what we value as a culture. And right now, we're not valuing our nourishment. We're not valuing the planet that feeds us. We're not valuing the people who are producing it. And so it's easy to say these policymakers need to change or these companies are bad, but the underpinning that shapes those decisions, we skip over. And that's the hard, slow, difficult work that underpins all the other change.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the foundation of it.
Yeah, but
I have an example also about charcoal. We wanted to get rid of charcoal, because of deforestation. And we talked to this community who said, no, our food, the food we eat here can only be cooked with charcoal. The taste is different. You cannot put it on anything else. So the solution we had to come up with planting trees only for charcoal. So that we'd stop them from cutting down the indigenous trees and plant the eucalyptus, which they could use so that they could continue using charcoal because for them, that particular food, called matoke in Uganda, where I come from, can only taste better with charcoal.
I bet it does taste good, though.
Yeah, I can't.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic, especially when you put in banana leaves. It's very good.
Beautiful.
We're all getting hungry now.
Yeah.
But it is a bit hard sometimes, Sam, to fight the marketing machine of the foods that, you know, like, I mean, I find myself, I'm such a bad eater. Like, I'm really bad.
Nobody's buying that. Nobody's buying that.
Thanks,
Nobody
Alice.
is buying that.
Thanks, guys. I really am. I don't know. I eat like a 6-year-old with money. Like, it's not, it's not good. But I genuinely think it's a conspiracy. They're working against me. All the things that are terrible for me just taste so good, and they're so addictive. And we had a conversation, Christian, on the way here about, I just had an epiphany when you said foods are meant to fulfill 3 buckets. I should let you say them because I don't even fully see this. This is how much of a 6-year-old I am right now. I can't even remember what
3 buckets. Okay.
It's supposed to do for me. But it was to feed your brain.
It's support your brain,
Support your brain.
feed your gut,
Feed your gut.
protect the liver.
And at the same time, now guess how much processed food does that?
0.
Never.
Yeah.
And that's me. In a Lay's chips bag. Like, that's me.
But you're doing really well, I have to say.
I know.
Thank you. I don't know. It's the height.
Good genes.
So, we're fighting against a bit of a machine. And maybe then it's that change of culture, but also the collaboration from the industry.
Yeah.
I think that's right. I mean, I think we as advocates trying to make a change, though, have made some real mistakes. Like, you know, we try to say, you should eat this way. It has vitamin A and fiber. It's really good for you. And they're like, love, sex, and happiness. They're like, drink this, be the sexy man or woman, get the sexy partner, live a great life. And it's like love, sex, and happiness beats fiber and vitamin B every day.
Yeah.
And what the difference is like we are speaking to people's heads and they're speaking to people's hearts. And it's emotional connection that actually helps lead to changing behavior. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't still do some work to help people understand the relationship to their brain and their guts and what, but in the end, if you're not connecting with people in emotion, food is emotional.
Yeah.
Like reminds us of the combination of things that happen in your brain that will most likely make you lead to a different food decision is a memory response plus an emotional one.
Yeah.
So it's like I connect with this and it triggers some sort of recollection of my childhood. That's what will get you to make a different decision. So we have to start getting much more sophisticated and go to people's hearts and connect emotionally because that is how that's how we interact with it.
Good point. And so much so that we ignore the obvious. Like Wes at our panel yesterday, founder of Rewild, was saying to me, what do gorillas eat? If you're trying to build muscle, look at a gorilla. They're not devouring protein all the time. And I was like, oh my God, they're not. Wait, neither are elephants or rhinos or all these massive animals. And I'm like, I need to put on muscle. How many grams of chicken and whatever do I, it's just, we ignore the obvious in the world for that emotion. And maybe that's the beauty and catastrophe of humankind.
It just needs to be directed in a better way.
Yeah. I want to open up the room to some audience questions. But I also want to remind people, and I hope you do have questions, because I think how often do we get to be in a room with these amazing people? But I want to remind people it's for questions, not necessarily for like remarks or introductions, but there could be a little bit of that. Does anyone have any questions? No. We've got lots.
Lots of questions. Love that.
Yeah. Should we go here in the front row first? They're coming around with a microphone.
Thank you. Thank you for each of you for your contributions to this beautiful session. Should I introduce myself?
Please.
Okay, so I'm Tuna Akar from Istanbul, Turkey, and I'm the founder of a youth-driven strategic energy platform. And as a really young individual myself and who's interested in diplomacy, I really wonder that as agriculture evolves under climate and resource pressures, how can youth-led climate diplomacy and also youth-led zero-waste agricultural models or policies be used not only for sustainability, but also to strengthen food security and regional cooperation? Thank you.
Can I pass that question to you?
Yeah.
Yeah? Would you
Who
like
wants
to
that?
take
That's a big question.
It's a big question.
It
Who's
sounded
thinking?
to me like, so you're thinking, Fridays for the future, that's youth climate diplomacy.
Yeah, I feel like Nyifamu, if you're happy to answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a very big question. By the way.
Implementation of youth in the policy-making processes.
Youth in the policy making process.
Agriculture, also sustainability, also zero waste, you can also say.
It's important.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I'll try as much as I can to answer that. And for one, I would say co-creating with young people who are building solutions on the ground. For policymakers on the other side, I had a session earlier where I was moderating, and I said it is very important for the policymakers, the government, to be able to co-create solutions and policies that concerns entrepreneurs, businesses, not just agripreneurs, but social enterprise or anyone on the ground doing businesses, because they need those policies to be implemented. However, they are on the other hand making these policies. These people are the ones being held accountable for these policies. They are the ones that are going to suffer for them if it has to be, or the ones that are going to make their businesses better. So it's co-creating with the policymakers, with the entrepreneurs to make policies better. But someone else can.
I can also add, AGRA has a partnership with the MasterCard Foundation. In fact, it is the largest partnership that we have in creating jobs for youth in this particular sector, the agri-food sector. And we've looked at it in two ways. One is to directly create those jobs on the ground, but the other one is to create the policies that can support those jobs. Because really for them to be lasting, you have to have policies. So we've worked, for example, with the African Union to make sure that the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Policy has a very youth-specific enabler. So there's policies there that enable youth. And I think, like she says, making sure that every policy that exists has a special place for, a special provision for youth. It helps. And in Africa, this is so important because this is the population. This is the population that we have. So we know that we want to create youth agripreneurs. That's what we call them.
Nice.
Yeah, agripreneurs. And because the average age of a farmer, who was talking about that, it's almost 60, 70.
Yeah.
So these are the farmers for us of the future, and we need to give them the policies. Yeah.
The other, just to that question, it's actually not so, it's a really important question, but the solutions are not so complicated. It's to have youth-led, movements at the table, where policies are discussed, be that at the local level, regional level, national level, and the global level. If I look out here into the room, the average attendance is actually intergenerational, but there are many more young people than in the conference center.
We're very happy here too.
So,
Let's have you.
I do think, and it's the same in the international multilateral system. So keep on insisting, and it is our job also to help you have a seat at the table, because that is absolutely central for the future.
I'm just gonna add one real thing. Just the answer to your question will be very different in different countries, right? But the foundation of it will always be about organizing young people, getting a collective voice, identifying like the key priorities that you think are important, and organizing as many people around. The more people you have starting to align in different organizations and different youth groups, because food is one that no matter what you're working on, healthcare, women's rights, water, climate, food underpins all of these things. So there's an ability to use food to try to bring an agenda together amongst even groups that are working on very different issues, education, healthcare, and have those set of priorities. The more voices you have behind it, the more power you'll have to get a seat at the table. And that is foundational, no matter where you are or what you're working on. If it's just a few, when we were in the White House and people, like one person called, you're like, but somebody calls representing like 20 million people, you're like listening. You're like, I'm really sorry. We'll change that, right? And so that's the foundation of I think that voice and that reach is the foundation of that power.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for the answers, guys. All right, I'll come back to the front, but there's someone in the back, hand really held up high.
He has the height advantage.
Yes.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, just there. I feel bad being the one picking. Oh my God.
Thank you so much. My name is Muhammad Al-Arif from Jakarta, Indonesia. Obviously in times of normalcy, we're able to balance, countries are able to balance food self-sufficiency with the benefits of global trade and so forth. But, we've experienced this during COVID, when we experience vaccine nationalism. When things get tough, food nationalism can arise. How can we, what sort of framework globally can we deploy in order to avoid this? Thank you.
Alice, do you have any thoughts there?
Can you repeat it one more time? Sorry. Sorry about that.
No, I was saying that in times of normalcy, countries can actually benefit or balance between food self-sufficiency with global trade and cooperation. But when we experience what we experienced during COVID, when we experience vaccine nationalism, when the going gets tough, food nationalism could also happen. How could we avoid this, and what sort of international framework can we deploy to avoid it? Thank you.
I think, so coming from a continent like Africa, where we do not quite have the self-sufficiency, we depend on each other. We will, whether Mali will import rice from Burkina Faso, or we actually do a lot of exchange of food. So I don't think we will have, yes, I agree with you in terms of, for example, during COVID, the borders actually closed. So there actually couldn't have been any movement of food. In fact, in many places, even the moving from urban to rural was hard, that we came up, there was a lot of urban agriculture that mushroomed because of that time, because they had to feed the cities. I think there's enough, of course, in terms of food policy to deal with this. In the Committee on World Food Security, there's a lot of work there. There's a lot of work on the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development that also looks at this. So I think we do have the measures to do this. And and to control having that kind of vaccine nationalism. But I think the bigger issue is that we actually do not have food self-sufficiency. That for me is the point. We don't have it, and we need to work towards self-sufficiency, at least in Africa where I come from. We do need to work towards self-sufficiency, but right now we depend, our import bill for food is very, very high, and we're working very much on productivity to reduce that, to increase our sufficiency. And another thing we do in Africa also is we recognize the food baskets. So one of the things we're thinking about is Southern Africa, for example, is a maize producer. West Africa is a big rice producer. So we want to be able to create food corridors that connect rice producing places that need rice to the places that produce rice, and the places that, so we like to have that. And so the movement is, the corridors and the movement, the corridors is to our advantage, and our policies on corridors and our policies on intra-Africa trade are also important to remove that, the protectionism that you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. It's dependency is definitely part of the problem, but you also don't want food rotting at borders.
No, you don't.
Because, of all the days it needs to wait. Christian, do you have anything to say on this, I wonder?
A lot, but I there are many more questions.
Of course. Does anyone want to say anything else, or should I jump to something else?
I think keep going. There's a lot of hands. Yep.
Oh my God, we are multiplying. Yeah. Okay, can we come back to the front, because I promised the young girl here in the glasses.
Hello. Hi. My name is Najma. I'm from India. So, sorry. Yeah. Lovely panel, and it's funny. And I'm very happy to be here. But so you're talking a lot about agriculture yielding and how to improve and how to include everyone. But my question is more focused on food waste, because there are 1 billion ton food waste annually, and it's 20% of what consumers need. And there is also these food waste produce 8 to 10% of greenhouse gases, which is also bad for us. And on the other side, there is world hunger and malnutrition, which is a huge problem. So my question is what are the major roadblocks, and how can we reduce this gap?
For reducing food waste in general.
Yes.
Sam, do you have something to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's depending on where we are, the food waste is being derived from different sectors. A lot of the work you're doing is to reduce that, because a lot of the problems is storage or processing, cold storage, especially after its harvest. So there's a lot of post-harvest loss. So in many nations, investment in that key infrastructure, there's people at home, they're not wasting food in most of the countries you're doing. They're not throwing tons of food away, but it's being lost from that farm getting to those consumers, because people just don't have money to throw in the garbage, right? In the West, it's a totally different problem. We're not wasting, there's not much challenge from field through the processing. There's some, but actually there's a lot of progress been made. It's pretty impressive about how efficient that part is. It's when it gets to us, and it goes back to those values and the lack of understanding and connection to the food, where it comes from, what it takes to produce it, and the cost and the livelihood at stake, that we just buy and and don't care about the implications. And so I think there's there's a cultural shift that needs to happen. It needs to be seen as a just disgusting, gross, uncool thing to do, to throw food away. But we also have to, I think, one thing I think we could do is restructure the fridge. Because right now in most countries, it's you put the vegetables in the bottom bin, and then day 4, you're ooh, that's starting to look a little bad, and you just kind of close it, and then by day 5, it's gone, and then you're just throwing food away.
Really good point.
And because in the end, and this goes back to the marketing challenge you were talking about, in the end, we eat what we see. And that's why
from LG here, I should be now let's cut a deal.
Yeah, but I mean, the reason you want the bag of chips is because you saw the ad that says chips, and you're oh, I love chips. You didn't want chips, you saw the chips, that made you want the chips. The same is in your fridge. If you see the food, and you're oh, right, but right when it's down here, you kind of forget about it. That has a huge impact on what we consume. So I think we have to think holistically, depending on where we are. But it's all going to get started with a cultural decision that says, this is no longer acceptable because of all the reasons you pointed out.
I mean, my mom literally would always say, there are children starving, finish your meal. Listen to our moms.
If we just, if we go back to the post-harvest losses, they can be reduced, right?
Totally.
Yes, storage, transportation, all of that. But then again, also local processing, because whatever does not go into the global value chains then goes local in bulk markets.
Totally.
But local processing can be done with relatively simple means, and it drastically reduces then food waste, and it gives access to nutritious food locally in local markets.
But
And I like this point today.
Okay, so just to add to what you said about like the post-harvest losses in like rural communities, for us, it's capacity to build a capacity on understanding what to grow, how to grow, and for who you're growing for, right? Because we are currently experiencing about 40% post-harvest losses, even in rural communities. And these are because of storage solutions, yes, part of it. However, people are growing things not for the demand side, and which is very important. So we need to block the gap for the demand to offtake these things. But not just produce because you like it or it looks good, but to have the right knowledge on what to grow and for who to grow. So if we can also bridge that gap, which we do at Farmatrix, providing knowledge for these farmers, giving them data-driven insights on this is the right time to grow this thing, this is the weather you need to grow. So we have 2 seasons in Nigeria, dry season and wet season. So wet season, what are you growing? What is the market demanding? Dry season, what is the market demanding? Would also help bridge the gap for post-harvest losses.
Really important point. Shall we move on to another question?
I think so.
Here.
So thank you so much for the great panel. My name is Blerta. I'm from Kosovo originally, even that my background is not so much in agricultural, but I really would like to make a link with my area a question, so maybe that will be kind of interesting and having a much more clear understanding from my view. So as we thought and as we're seeing right now that agricultural evolution, it's increasing and shaping by the AI, and especially for the farming and the biotechnology. I would like to know from your thought of view and from your experience as well, how can global leaders balance this innovation and efficiency with equity, ensuring that the smallholder farmers can develop all of the regions and not left in behind the new agricultural paradigm?
That's a good question. And that it's not extractive or exploitive. Who wants to answer that one? Yeah.
So we try to innovate in our product. We built in the Netherlands, and I keep on repeating it to the Dutch government, we built a R&D center with 0 state support. We just did it ourselves, and we have 160 scientists there working every day on finding better solutions for the products that we do. Sometimes with the help of AI, sometimes with the help of biotechnology. Also works our way back into, so we do a lot of development days with suppliers to us, for instance. And we try to jointly develop possible solutions. We're also trying to look at new crops, for instance, right? Because there's a lot of monocrops, as Sam alluded to, like are there perhaps in Africa indigenous crops to find that could bring the same oils with this, or even better ALA content, which your body breaks down into omega-3, for instance. And I think therefore it's also crucial, and then I'm coming back to the public-private partnerships here, that especially smallholder farmers are empowered to not miss that train, because it's so easy as a global Western company to just drive on it. But to the earlier question about food nationalism, right, we produce local for local, so we don't ship things all around the world. So we buy from local farms, we process it locally, so also therefore trying to reduce as much waste as possible. But it means that innovation that we then develop in beautiful Wageningen, Netherlands, try to pronounce Wageningen, which is sometimes referred to as the Silicon Valley of food. It's really where the whole ecosystem comes, and where a lot of students from Africa also come to learn. That's another part of innovation, I think, that is so crucial for everyone to have access to. And I think this is also where development agencies, for instance, can play quite a big role. And I wanted to make one point on the earlier points, if you don't mind, about farming and about young people want to become a farmer. In my early teens, I had the privilege of helping out on a dairy farm near my grandmother's, and it was fantastic, loved it. Farming is a fantastic, noble profession. The problem is that in Africa in particular, we take urbanization pretty much for granted. Right? It's, urbanization is happening. All these cities, especially Nigeria, all these cities booming. But what happens when that? when someone moves to a city, they decide that being a farmer is not their future, right? And what happens is you lose a food producer, and you gain a food consumer. So you create an extra gap. And also there, I think, in terms of de-risking, what I would love to see from development agencies and maybe philanthropy also, try to give farmers a guaranteed minimum price for the crops over a longer period of time that allows them to invest in the equipment that they need, in storage, in infrastructure, all that stuff. Because the thing is, we want to really change the food system, and we need to because it's broken. Right? It's completely broken. But it's doable by combining consumer needs. We have a lot of knowledge on there. That's great. Respecting planetary boundaries. I think Sam alluded, a lot to that. But also looking at farmer livelihoods. If those three don't go together, we won't solve it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Additional knowledge as well. I think we always think all the solutions should come from Wageningen University, but there are local solutions. There are some traditional solutions that are still, there's some innovation there. I think we need to bring it. Local knowledge, we need to bring more of that.
And localize AI. Localize AI.
Localize AI, yeah.
In local languages, local realities, local traditional knowledge, and there are fabulous young people in the digital savannah who are actually working on this, and we should support them.
Yeah, not designed for them, designed with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So digital savannah in East Africa.
And buy them in Kenya's iHub and everywhere else, yes.
Okay. Can I come to yourself in the back? Yes. Oh, sorry, just behind, sorry. I'm not sure we'll fit everyone in, guys. We don't have too much time left.
Yeah, thank you very much. Agriculture is back. It's very good, but we are only the public forum here. I have no clue what's happening in the main rooms, whether it's also a focus topic there. I'm Renate Hahn. I've been an EU official, an EU diplomat for a long time. I worked also on the preparation of the UN Food System Summit and the follow-up event. One theme that we haven't discussed here, and I wanted to hear your views on that. 80% of the global subsidies going into agriculture are promoting the production of 5 crops: rice, soy, wheat, sugar, corn. These 5 crops are also responsible for overweight and obesity, which is also a malnutrition theme and probably currently greater than undernourishment. What would happen? What could be the benefits if these subsidies were either dropped or redirected? What impact would that have on science, on production, on the variety of crops that would then actually also be perhaps more climate friendly in the production in the future?
Thank you.
Should I take that?
Please.
I think it's a great question. I think my answer is two-part. Also, when you're talking about the world, there's a lot of nuance, the difference in the EU, America, Global South, whatever. But I will say that it obviously makes no sense to be subsidizing crops that do not align with the dietary guidelines, the health recommendations that governments are putting out. So it's an inherent and very deep contradiction. My experience is you're not just going to take them away. And, there's a big system that is well in place. But I will say that in most parts of the world, certainly in the United States and in Europe, farmers and eaters are not making decisions because of the subsidies. A lot of the difference it's a wildly oversimplistic narrative that government subsidized this, which is why I'm eating a double cheeseburger. It's actually unfortunate. It would be wonderful if that were the case, because that's actually something you can just focus on and solve over time. I think it's bad policy, but I don't think we need to be careful not to overstate the impact that's having. In the United States, for example, when I went into the White House, I was like, all right, I'm going to change subsidies and everything's going to be great, because that was the narrative I was given. And basically, I had one agro-economist say, yeah, if you got rid of them, you would change maybe 1% of acreage grown in the United States, because you have very mature ecosystems set up around these crops in big markets. I think that money can be used to incentivize different behaviors, however, particularly around sustainability and regenerative agriculture and climate-smart agriculture. I think the big difference that we really see is those crops have gotten billions of dollars over decades around how to grow them much more efficiently. So productivity on a per acre basis is incredible, whereas things that are nourishing us, fruits, vegetables, other whole grains, have gotten statistically no dollars in comparison to those crops you mentioned. And that's really why they're cheaper. And that's why they end up supplying so much of our calories. So finding ways to innovate and bring down the cost of those more nutrient-dense foods and using those subsidies to start incentivizing more sustainable, healthier practices, I think is going to be the only path forward. And it will be incremental. It'll be through things like crop insurance. Right now, crop insurance, if you stop using certain chemicals, you can't get insurance. Or if you start growing certain other crops, you can't get insurance. So there's a big problem there. So policy is important, but I found that it can be overstated as sort of like the silver bullet that can solve everything. It's obviously a piece, but it's not. The impact is not, I think, always what we would hope it to be.
We're seeing more promotion now of what they're calling adapted crops. So millet, sorghum, legumes. I mean, Ethiopia has a huge. Yeah, we're starting to see that, and those crops are actually better adapted to climate change than others. You don't have to do. They're not as affected. So I think you're right. The subsidy system is hard to fight, but I think if we can promote those ones more and more,
they must change.
Yeah,
they must change, but.
Are we happy to take one more question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
There's one. Yeah, there's two.
I don't want to pick.
There's three. There's three. Maybe we take the three.
We've run out of time. I'm going to go to this gentleman.
You have 3 minutes, yeah. Okay.
Thank you for apologizing on my behalf.
Yes, I try to keep it short. Thank you so much. Not just because it wasn't about AI, but about really something interesting.
Not that one.
I'm wondering, you mentioned in the beginning that, and I think we all know that, or at least accept that, that climate shocks are coming more and more often, and especially if we look at the global south, it's, I think, hard to grasp the impact that we're having, because I think if we look at the Western world, if there's climate shocks coming, we just take more money and buy the stuff from other regions. So how can we prepare best, or how can we improve the resilience for these upcoming climate shocks that are getting worse and worse? And yeah, that's basically the question.
Herman, I'm kind of actually interested on your thoughts from the private sector on this. Should you take a stab?
Sure. Look, the farmer, from our perspective, the farmer is 3 to 4 steps before the product comes to us. It doesn't mean that we should not be involved in the research. So we do various projects, East Africa in particular, but also Kansas. We have 2 big brands in the United States, Country Crock and I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. They are, made with crops grown in Kansas and surrounding states, and it's not that just these problems exist in the global south. Also in the Midwest, for instance, there can be floods, there can be numerous things, and if you've driven there, there are endless fields, nothing in between. So we work with initiatives, for instance, to help farmers plant things in between that can then maybe absorb the water, improve the soil, make the ground more resilient. Because also there, after a while, crop insurance becomes unaffordable. It's not something that we have to do. We could also simply say, well, it's none of our business. It's 3 steps, before in the supply chain. But if I think you truly care about, creating value for people, planet, and at the same time also for your company by making profit, because I look out the window every Friday afternoon, but there's another money truck, so we have to make money. That's also what we need to do as a company. But you do have a responsibility to work in the field, and we do as much as we can, maybe not enough, but I think also by being here and engaging and talking and all that stuff, we do take our responsibility, and it's it's a vital thing, because if fields wash away with rain or torrential rain, we will then run an issue in terms of our products being produced and then not reaching the people that we want to.
It's
reach.
good business sense to invest in adaptation for farmers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense.
But it's everyone's task, right? It's not just us. It's also those who come after us. So, for instance, the retail companies, they have a responsibility too. Everyone has a responsibility. And because it's a shared responsibility, I think the investment per company should therefore be, bearable to especially help those smallholder farmers, right, really down in the chain that, you know, are living from harvest to harvest, because that's the reality.
And we've just run out of time. So that is a great note to end us on.
Insurance will be the last one.
On the clock.
Yes.
Insurance.
I just want to really thank everyone for coming and thank the audience for such meaningful questions. Honestly, it's been a pleasure doing this panel. The amazing panelists I have the privilege of moderating with. Thank you so much.
Thank you.